from all, to all, with all, for all, through all. We thank the gods of creation. We thank the ancestors. We thank the forces of nature. And we thank the earth. We thank them for their direction, their protection, their guidance, for keeping us, showing us, allowing us to know and enjoy life to its fullest, now and later.
Black people who once loved with the slow march of time. Time was ours to hold in the soft, love-warm chambers of our hearts. And once we, the Afro mommies and daddies of a sun world, would turn our strands of hair into antennas to tune in the juju madness and syncopated love rhythms of Africa. And we loved with time, and we took the time to love, and with the right time we loved, and we loved time after time. Will we ever love again? Will we ever love again? Will we really ever love again? Or will we just sit and rot away with the brighter tomorrows in the skag-filled, rat-cluttered halls of our minds?
Black people, what y'all gonna do? Black people, what y'all gonna do?
Will the real black people please stand up?
Jumbo Habari, and welcome once again to Our Story, the program that makes being black positive, relevant, desirable, and true to a lost nation in America. A program that speaks to the historical significance of the original people of the earth. Our Story Network takes pride in setting itself away from other programs that centers on entertainment or rhetorical mumbo-jumbo that misdirects your attention onto other things that causes you to exhaust your resources and renders you brain dead. It is Our Story who talks about commitment to you and your people. It is Our Story that champions the establishment of the black genius that once ruled the world. It is Our Story that focuses you in on the rewards of black advocacy, black activism, black involvement, and black power. It is Our Story that encourages survival of the black race and solicits your involvement to that end. Black folks must remember, race first is the call of the day, and we as a people must. I say must take the pledge if we, the people of the original race, expect to survive. As I take the many lessons I have received over the years and reflect upon them by sharing these lessons with my brothers and sisters, I realize the power that we as a people possess for the most part has gone unnoticed. The masses of black folks who have been rendered lost and disenfranchised from the meaning and mission our creators intended for us to embrace is all but deplete. The masses of black folks who have been rendered disenfranchised from the meaning and mission our creators intended us to break is all but depleted. It is because of the mission and meaning of the life of our ancestors that I realize how blessed as a people we really are. What fascinates me are the many gifts I have been granted, which allows me to distribute the information onward to you. And as always, that message begins and ends with the importance of blackness. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Greetings, friends, family, the inquisitive onlookers, and our beloved viewers. Welcome, welcome, and welcome to Our Story Network. We thank you for being with us this evening, and we trust you will take something of value away with you after the program. That is the aim and goals of Our Story Network, the network that leads the pack in modern day communications and ancient and modern education. I say ancient and modern education because of the many errors we have found in the translations and interpretations of ancient records by forces who are not interested in blacks progressing. The modern revelations by new black scholars have opened the window of discovery that has allowed the truth and knowledge originally disseminated by the black masters of education to flourish once again. This is one of the stumbling blocks that has kept black people from rebuilding their greatness and recapturing their birthright. Welcome again, brothers and sisters, to another segment of Our Story. We greet you because of the brotherhood and sisterhood that we share amongst each other. Before we get into the subject matter tonight, I must apologize for last week's program and the content from which is being used as propaganda over YouTube under Tushka in New Orleans and also under Tushka Humak Zilop. Last week was supposed to be the announcement of Chief Wolo's installation as chief of the Bayou Lacombe indigenous tribe of the Choctaw Nation. Chief Bald Eagle of the Masking Indians had requested the interview without notifying Our Story that additional people would be accompanying him. It was not until the day following the program that I began to receive phone calls about Tushka from the callers, which caused concern about the validity of his movement and the work as a so-called organizer of indigenous people. Many of the calls were complaints of Tushka soliciting money and not providing what the people thought they would receive. As far as I know, Tushka has not been charged with any crimes, but the complaints are evidence enough for me to warn anyone who saw the program last week that Our Story, W.C. Johnson, or anyone affiliated with Our Story Network never intended to give any appearance of supporting Tushka, his organizations, or his work. If you can remember, Tushka was very insulting and very negative towards the struggles of black people in America and everywhere else in the world. Tushka's rejection of the legitimacy of black people to be identified as such was enough to question his legitimacy as a freedom fighter, and I use freedom fighters all in small case letters. Unfortunately, because of Tushka's behavior and position towards black people, I could not, in good conscience, attend the installation of Chief Wolo, as I did not want to give the appearance that I supported Tushka in any way. So, as lessons learned, lessons continue to teach. I don't want to color all Indians with the same brush as I paint Tushka, but my experience was Tushka's work is non-productive for black people, and Tushka's work divides the indigenous people of the world from the black people of the world. Let us take a look at last week's fiasco.
Against the Commerce Department and Census Bureau for all sorts of international issues, including misrepresentation, identity theft, genocide, and a number of other things that they participated in the development of the United States Corporation itself. NAAIP is an institution that's currently designed to assist tribal families and tribal nations on repatriating to the original tribal government that our people used to hold. So many of the people of this country have been disenfranchised from the 16 and 1700s, disenfranchised as Negro, and have progressed through what we are today. And so many of us are labeled as African American, which is an immigrant, beginning with the letter I, immigrant, not from this particular landmass. So what we've been doing, we initially started out with Native American groups, BIA groups, in assisting them to make sure that they were receiving the claims that they were afforded. And in the process, we began to have lots of requests from our brothers that we knew were American Aborigine. And let me say this, not to mean to offend anyone, but I'm not here to support the black issue. I don't know of any black issues that exist. I am an American Aborigine, and I have many family members across this country that resemble me, and they are not black. And I don't carry that totem. That's a misnomer. That's a very, very destructive misnomer for American Aborigine, the original people of this country. So I stand firm in promoting the American Aborigine and the rights that belong to the American Aborigine, the laws that belong to the American Aborigine. The laws are the same as the laws perfected for the Native American and for the American Indian. And we have been tricked and, as Malcolm said, bamboozled into believing something that's not what we are. But I'm here to help to facilitate the transfer of information, the transformation of power to the Chattahoochee Nation and its people. NAAIP was invited down here to participate in those efforts of repatriation, which we've already begun. And the Chattahoochee Nation, they are the same blood as this lady that many might remember as Verdiatsi, Washington. She carried the helm for so many of the people of this territory, and these people are from this territory. Therefore, they are subject to the same benefits and rights that the Empress laid down years ago.
But going back to Tushka Humak, you know, you are trying to move within the confines of the law, European law. And my problem is, at one time, the European law allowed for slaves, from which I'm a descendant of. I don't know, and the knowledge that I have, though it may be limited, of European law, whether it's here in this country, whether it's in any country on the face of this earth, European law has always been established to take care of, maintain, and justify what Europeans do to others. So you're trying to get land back. I'm trying to understand, and you mentioned Malcolm, Malcolm had gone to the United Nations, which is another group of Europeans who will take sides with their brothers here in a court of law. But how do you see yourself gaining anything worthwhile from European laws who care nothing about indigenous law, which was the first law, when they came in and did what they did?
You have the law of nations, that's international law. You have just cogent, which is international law, which is international customary law. International customary law is just simple common law that travels the globe. What we have is international customary law. We have federal law, federal code, which protects Aborigines or Indians in this country. And we have what's called tribal law that's established through the Court of Indian Offenses. And with tribal law, that's based on the tribe's constitution. That's based on tribal belief. That's based on tribal spirituality. So the laws that you speak of are not the laws that the members of NAAIP practice, and it's not the level of laws that we promote for the protection of our people. We use many. The United Nations says in its declaration that indigenous people must file constructive notice to the state for all issues pertaining to the rights of the indigenous people. Constructive notice is a form of legal document. It's an affidavit. It's an affidavit that must be responded to, must be rebutted, and when it's not, it stands as fact in law. And we have numerous cases for numerous members around the country where we utilize what's called Article 3 jurisdiction, which was created by the United States. But the United States was a bunch of black men before they all turned white. And that's something that we have to research in history, that they were black men that created, black Indians that created the laws of the United States. It's just that they've been convoluted and legislated out through legislative process of color of law that has changed the premise of law itself. We function with our people by utilizing the Constitution. The Constitution is the first law. It says that the only relationship with the United States and the Indians is that of commerce, in transacting commerce, nothing else. So because we know how to take what's most important from them, their pocket, their money, their jobs, their children's tuition. So we, as the premier institution for indigenous people in this country, we function out of a consulate that protects indigenous people that come from other countries who are not having embassies at the United States in Washington, D.C., or consulate offices. So we utilize their law to keep them in check. And that's the problem with the Indians of the past. They refused to learn the white man's ways, and he was able to completely annihilate them and consume them. So we are now utilizing their law to flip it back on them and make a few changes.
You know, I had noted when I was doing the research for this evening, it's called the Dancing Rabbit Creek Treaty.
Yes, I'm familiar.
You're familiar with that. Within that treaty, they turned the indigenous people from being free people into slaves. The way they did that was they promised them that they would give them certain land, certain privileges, certain gratuities, what I call trinkets, junk beads, essentially is what it ends up being. But in exchange for that, the indigenous people had to promise certain things. And one of the many things they had to promise was to stop being indigenous. So are you telling me you're supporting the move to take indigenous people out of their environment, out of their mindset, and making them associate white folk?
Absolutely not.
But that's what's in here.
What do you mean?
That's what's in the Dancing Rabbit Creek Treaty. It's telling them that they had to go to school to learn to be white.
In 2016, I spoke at the United Nations. Sagamore Billy Guy, he's the 9th great-grandson of the Massasoit, King Philip, the King Philip Wars.
Once again, I apologize to our viewers and the black nation as a whole for giving Tushka the same respect I afford other black people of the universe. I also extend my apologies to all those who feel as if they have been taken advantage of by Tushka, and thanking them for letting me know to what extent Tushka will go to advance his own personal position. Moving on to the busy week, we have enjoyed learning valuable lessons from people who consider themselves black and proud. Last Saturday, I had the honor to visit once again with Sharron Livingston, Kojo Livingston's wife, for those who may not know, and I'm sure there are not too many of you, but Brother Kojo transitioned about 6 years ago. His wife, Sharron, still carries the banner for Kojo and the family. Sister Sharron has compiled a book of Kojo's writings entitled The Hard Truth and Nothing But, articles that appeared in various newspapers and publications during Kojo's life. The book is available at Community Book Center, and I would personally recommend you getting a copy to read the issues that were prevalent during the day of Kojo and to see that they are as irrelevant as they are today. As in all of Kojo's writing, he always interjected solutions to the problem, as Kojo always signed off with a question, and that question is, and in the words of Kojo, what you gonna do? Another thing I did last week was to moderate the conversation between Mrs. Lucille Bridges and the youth of Stallings Gentile Park. I have found in life there are those rare moments that unleash jewels and gems of wisdom that you can't put a price on. And that's always referred to as being priceless. Last week was a priceless moment, and I interviewed Mrs. Lucille Bridges. We are all familiar with the Ruby Bridges desegregation activities of the 1960s, where Ruby Bridges walked into William Frantz Elementary School in the 9th Ward. As I understand it, there is a statue honoring Ruby Bridges in the school today. I also know Ruby had very little to say in what was happening to her as a child. This is why I found it simply amazing to have an opportunity to talk to the mother of Ruby Bridges, the woman who had to worry about her daughter being hurt or even killed by some half-baked nut who believed he was standing up for his God and his country by denying Ruby Bridges the opportunity for a better education. I want to share with you some of the exciting information Mrs. Bridges shared with those of us at Stallings Gentile Park. He got his hand up.
Y'all listen up.
Anthony, go ahead.
Who was Ruby Bridges? This little girl that's right here.
She was a little girl. Took her to a white school that white people can hate her. She cried and everything.
She didn't really cry the first day at all. She thought, you know what? She thought it was so good with that many people there. She thought it was like Mardi Gras or something. She never saw that many people, around school before. But they just saying that, when they said what they want.
But some of the white people who was nice to the Bridges.
All right, so wait a minute.
All of them.
So I was just wanting you all to know if you all know who she was, because guess what? Guess what this lady is? Y'all know who she is?
No.
So the little girl that you see there, this is her mother. That's her mother.
Yeah.
So her mother's here, so you guys can ask whatever questions you have in reference to how was it that your child was not welcome at a school with white people that didn't want her there. So you guys can go to, Ruby Bridges, this is her mother right here. So you guys can go back to your schools and take pictures with her. No, that's her mother. Right.
I want to thank everyone that is here this evening. Appreciate you coming out. Kendra is one of the pioneers who has been fighting for years to make sure that this park remains here for our children and our neighbors in the neighborhood so that we can continue to have programs in addition to the swimming in the summer, that we have programs all year long. So there are several adults who are in this area or who are from this area who have been working diligently to make sure that we have a place for our youth as well as our young adults and seniors to be able to utilize, because this is a very historic city and this is a historic neighborhood, whether you realize it or not.
It is. It's really.
Yes, ma'am. So I feel very honored to be in the midst of an elder who has paid more dues than any one person is required to pay. Think about it. I know most of you are kind of young, but you've been in the store and you bought your little candy and you spent a few dollars here and there. But just think if you were not allowed to go into a store to spend your money, or if you were not allowed to go to a school to get your education. And we're not talking about private schools, we're talking about public schools.
That's true.
That we all pay for. So, Mrs. Bridges was bringing up her daughter, Ruby, who at one time was each one of your ages. And she had a decision to make, whether or not to allow her daughter to risk her life to make changes in this city and in this country that all of you are enjoying. Had it not been for her, you may not be able to go to public schools. So, I'm going to shut up and get some knowledge here and learn some things, and I'm going to have Mrs. Bridges to tell us about those times when she was confronted with a life and death decision about her daughter, her family, her own safety, and the future of New Orleans in New Orleans public schools. Ms. Bridges, want to welcome you. Thank
you. Now, it was, like you said, the decision we made, it was really hard, but we had to go to the school board, me and my husband. But how she really first did it was 135 children took the test. And after the test that they took, there was 5 girls that passed. It was Ruby and another little girl right next door to me, Robin Hickenbauer. But the reason they wouldn't allow her to go to school, her daughter wasn't married, and they give the daughter to her mother. And then, after they found out that she wasn't, her daughter didn't marry, they call that illegitimate child.
Yes.
That's just how tough they were. They didn't want, you to go to school like that. And Ruby was little, because my husband was skinny, little tall, skinny, and she was skinny too. And after she got in there, they said she didn't have enough, she had to see a doctor to get, to get better. So Dr. Smith uptown, he was our doctor. He was he lived way uptown. He was the doctor for her. And his wife and his daughter would come and get Ruby and my other daughter every Friday after they get out of school. And they would teach her and keep them and show them what they had to do. He doctored on her for nothing. And Viner's drugstore, he was the one to provide all of the medicine for her. Okay, they found out that she had a little something in her eye, and they said she had to go and get that out. There was a doctor on St. Bernard and that and something. He pulled her teeth for nothing. Every doctor that did things for us, he did it for nothing, so that she could stay in school. And so long she stayed there, but at the time it was so hard when she was going. But she, like she said, she was ready for the marshals when they come. Yes. Every day they would come there to pick her up. I had a girlfriend across the street. I wouldn't even have to dress her. And a girlfriend would come across that street and have her dressed every morning. And after that, the United States Marshals would come and pick her up. And then when they come, if one couldn't come, they made sure to call the state troopers and let them know that the other one couldn't come. And at night, our house had to be guarded 24 hours a day and night. They had 4 United States Marshals in the car, 2 in the back and 2 in the front. One slept by the other one watched, and then they had machine guns in the house. In their cars. And they watched that house all night long. Nobody, even to our landlord, couldn't do it. He was black, but he couldn't come there without them checking him. So they wouldn't allow nobody to come. Then they stopped our mail. They wouldn't let our mail come because they said you could put stuff in the mail. And we just lived it just like that. It was something, but no one. Now they had a white cab driver one day came, and he stopped right on the street. He pulled up and stopped on the street, and when they seen him, they started running to the car. Honey, he jumped in that car and left. So everybody said he probably had a bomb, to do it, but he left. And they left, but we couldn't get our mail. We had to get our mail at AP2 Road down, AP2 Road way downtown? Yeah. Well, we had to get our mail by them because they were so terrible, honey. And even the neighbors, that was so hard with our neighbors that the little kids would play with, they were scared to let them come over and play with her. So that kind of worried her. But at school she did. When the Marshals brought us there that morning, every morning they come in there and brought every child out of that school. There were about 600 kids in that school. It was early in the morning to 3 o'clock before they started out. The Marshals stayed right there. We were asking the Marshals what happened and why he was making the noise and stuff. But he said, they just don't pay him no attention, just like that. But she I taught her. I had an apple for her, and I had one for her teacher whenever she got her teacher. And one of the teachers, her teacher was out of town. She's the one who stayed there and taught her. Her name was Bobby Henry. So she stayed down here. Her and her husband was here for a vacation. She stayed and taught her. Do you know she's still living? Mm-hmm. She is. Was it a black teacher? Or no, she was white. And then the United States Marshals, one of them just died last year. His wife and I, they was in Illinois, and we stayed friends. She sent me cookbooks. She sent me Christmas cards, and I would thank him all the time when he said, "Ms. Bridges, I was just doing my job." And he said, but what we do, don't trust everybody. He said, because a lot of people you trust, they be trying to take your money away from you, take your story. Like if you tell your story, they could take that and go out and make, you know, a book or make money out of it. And he said, just be careful, because I went through a lot. And you know, when he died, my daughter, Ruby, she went to the funeral, but I didn't go, I was in Houston. But she sent me a list of things, his picture, and a list of things what he did before he got in the United States Marshal. So it was really hard, and then they were called up, they had all the kids out, and then the teachers, they was angry. They didn't even, you know, come in, they were just on the side. So Ruby said one day she heard the children talk, and then she told the teacher, why that I hear some kids talking, why I can't go where they were. And she said, I don't know what I'm gonna see about it. Then she had to go call the school board and find out why she couldn't go. And with that, and then finally, that's how they finally let her start going to school, you know, playing, being in the room with the other kids and playing with them. But it was hard. We had to go through so much. But like I said, and then, the main thing, right there on St. Rock in Galvez, my husband worked there with a white guy for so many years. Do you know the second day after we were at school, he found out that what he told him, he said, oh, that's your daughter that's going to school. He said, if you don't take her out of school and go back to Mississippi where y'all come from, she's not going to go to school no more. And she's not going to, we don't fire you. So it was on a Tuesday, and then that Wednesday, they fired him. And I went back there and fired him, and then that what worried me a lot, because he was begging me at night to take her out so he could have his job, you know. And I told him, I said, you just can't do things that way, you just have to give it to God. And a lot of times, and he fought in Korea War, and see, that's what hurt him so bad. He said, my little 6-year-old can't go to school with white kids, and he had to fight in that Korea side by side. His best friend was a white guy. And when they went out to fight one morning, he got his leg blew off. My husband put his gun down and took him and put him in the plane. I got his Purple Heart, and right now at my house. Yeah. But then he was short to people, you know, and say, I done went through this much, and you know, I still have to go through all of this. He said, just for my child to go to school. It was really hard, but we just prayed. And if you pray hard enough and you believe something, God will make it happen. And so that's what I did. Just kept praying. And like I said, the people at the, we wasn't too far from the riverfront. The guys, some of them would get paid on Wednesday, some would get paid on Thursday. They would come for 12 o'clock, they'd come and bring maybe $200 or $300 a piece, or maybe 2 or 3 big bags of groceries. They really hope us out. And then a couple of the churches we was going to would take us to church, and the pastor would ask everybody for canned goods and stuff. And we really had it, you know, pretty good.
What type of work did you do?
I did, at the time then I was working with the chicken factory on after Carson. They had a chicken factory over there where they kill the chickens and clean them. And then I worked sometime at the hotel, sometime I do setting work. And at the time then, we didn't have it was Mary, Ruby, Mary, and Carl. Just the 3 of them then. And then after that, you know, I wind up asking God to let me have 4. And guess what? I said, I want 2 girls and 2 boys. He let me have 4 girls and 4 boys. I had 8 children.
You gotta be careful what you ask for.
When I tell my story, I said, you have to be careful what you ask God. They would lay down. They would lay down. Who's the oldest? Ruby.
Who's the youngest?
Her name is Sharron. She's in Slidell.
How old she is?
I don't really know. I know when her birthday, but I don't forgot, you know,
She's
the all.
20-something?
Huh?
She's older than that.
She rotten, and she got 2.
When listening to young people responding to something they hear from the older generation, I can't help but feel energized that somehow, some way, our next generation will find their way to the homelands. I am also worried that many of our youth will get caught up in the foolishness that European education somehow distorts and denigrates. It has to be similar to what the Europeans have done to my generations and the generations since. Chaos and confusion is the trick of the day, and through chaos and confusion comes slavery and death. Now that is a show in of itself, and we will move forward for this evening, but we will return to this subject in the coming weeks. But along these lines, I want to address one of our viewers' concerns. Black History Month, from their observation, is full of black exploitative movies that have no real value in celebration of a people with a long, rich history. Our viewer mentioned the possibility of presenting black people, both local and nationally, who have made solid contributions to the advancement of people held down by socioeconomic conditions of a war no one wants to admit is being waged. So, because of that, I offered Mrs. Lucille Bridges as the first in a series of black heroes and sheroes that have made substantial contributions in America without being noticed. With that being said, I want to alert you to a black history fact that I was not aware of. We have living in our borders of New Orleans an Olympic champion in an area of competition that few, if any, blacks have excelled in, or even participated in for that matter. Now, I am not ready to present this program tonight, but I just want to tease your interest for the show coming up soon on our Story Network. So prepare yourself for a lesson that will challenge your sober thoughts. Moving to another crucial subject, this past week I mentioned the plight of Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman from Minnesota, who openly criticized Israel by saying Washington's support for the Jewish state is all about the Benjamins. Omar, who is a Muslim and has caused the House and Senate to change rules about wearing head wraps in the building of Congress, is being singled out for anti-Semitic views. Now, this is where I became enthralled with the controversy on Chuck Perkins' Chuck Wagon show this past Monday. Now, for the record, let me say again, Ilhan Omar, who is considered black by DNA, is more Semitic than many of the people proclaiming themselves to be Jews. According to the biblical accounts, that is, the white people posing as Jews are not Jews. But that is another fight for another day. What the current fight is, why is it whenever anyone questions the activities and or behaviors of the so-called Jew, they are immediately attacked as being anti-Semitic and then demanded to apologize for the words they uttered as a guilty party. When has the Jew ever apologized for the inhumane treatment Jews have consistently placed upon the black race? Why are people made to feel guilty for raising questions of a people who had trouble historically being expelled from countries throughout Europe? Because of my comments, Chuck and I had a 2-hour debate about the relationships between blacks and Jews. So much so that this week we are going to discuss the book, volumes 1 and 2 of The Secret Relation Between the Blacks and Jews, published by the Nation of Islam's research team. I want to extend an invitation to any and all who want to have a chance to tune in, and if you have the spirit, join in the conversation. I believe you will be astonished at some of the information you will receive. That's going to be next Monday from 4 until 6 p.m. on WBOK AM. Also, let me remind you of the YouTube connection for our story. And the YouTube connection, you can catch us at W.C. Johnson or Our Story TV show or Our Story Network TV show. On Vimeo, we're at vimeo.com/Our Story. So, we have had a very full week, and we have learned a lot. Hopefully, you were able to see quite a bit and enjoy and learn from what you were able to see. We're going to open up the lines. We have just a few minutes left, but we'll open up the lines if you care to call in and talk about any of the things that we discussed earlier. But I would reiterate that the hard truth and nothing but the truth is a very enlightening book about the work of Kojo Livingston being introduced and presented by his wife. Now, I have worked many years with Kojo, and we have shared many meetings together. We were both members of the UNIA Black Star Line 466, and it is an honor to be able to reminisce and be with family members of Kojo and talk about the work that we do each and every day, each and every year. Now, I had talked about earlier the fact that there is a need for more participation. There is a need for more mobilization among not only just the youth, but also middle-aged and older black folk. The middle-aged and older black people have a lot to contribute, a lot to pass down to our younger generation. And believe me, if we don't start making the connections for them to understand what we have had to deal with over the years, then unfortunately, they're going to have to go through the same process with the same problems as well. And it's a sad irony that for some reason, throughout the thousands of years that we have been under bondage, that we end up reinventing the same wheel, going through the same kinds of problems, situations, the same hazards, the same joys, and the same unpleasantries, only because we do not pass our information, our history, We do not pass down to our young people what it is we have been able to accomplish, how we've been able to accomplish it, and why it was necessary for us to do the kinds of things we have done in our lifetime. It is unfortunate to say that such a great people have lost their way. You know, the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad always talked about the lost and found nation. And that's so true even today. We are still lost, and most of us have not been found. And unless we decide to do something about that, we're going to stay lost. We're going to stay behind the proverbial cue ball. That's a subject for another day, but just think about it. The cue ball and the function of the cue ball. I want to thank our viewers because, you know, I get to learn an awful lot because of the things you share with me. And I make that available to our audience, both on television and radio, because it's necessary for us to share whatever we have. Sister Lucille Bridges talked about how they were able to make it because black people, without being asked to do things, offered, shared. They were acting out of brotherhood and sisterhood. Well, we've come to the end of the road for this week. We'll be back next week. Invite you to tune in on Mondays from 4 to 6 on WBOK. We invite you to give us a call and share with us your concerns. Share with us anything you think is relevant for us as a people to move forward. And if you have ideas or you want to share on the television and radio, call me. We'll see if we can't make that happen. But as always, brothers and sisters, blackness is the most important thing that we can embrace and be concerned with. As I always leave us with the last few words, we have to stay black. We have to stay involved. But beyond all things, we must stay committed to blackness, stay committed to ourselves. Till we meet again, brothers and sisters, Yahuwah Sasa Ngawa.
Lift every voice and sing till
All right.
heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing till victory is won. Listen to me now, yo, before Dr. Dre, there was Dr. James, welding cords around a copper frame. We sing songs, not for the accolades, to lift voices like a helicopter blade. High in the listening skies, my eyes glisten and tears drop down like rain. Not from the pain, from the joy of how far we came. My brainstorms are designed to celebrate our reign. The collective, monuments erected, continents affected, presidents elected, ancestors making moves with the music we've been blessed with. We use it to keep communities connected. Through harmonies, a harmony is collected. Reaping the fruits our foremothers invested. Lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, yeah, lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, listen, lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on. Sing a song, full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song, full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. It's a new day. Let us march on till victory is won. Till victory is won. This is victory music. Come on, I hope you feel it. Yeah.